Tucker Carlson's recent tour of Australia has me once again pondering the nature of fame and fortune, and how compatible these things are with a credible position inside the truth movement. I thought Tucker did rather well, and linked in the description is his parting address to Australia at the conclusion of his 2-week tour. Tucker's based takes, his acerbic wit, his signature high-pitched guffaw, and his compelling 7-year stint on Fox News before they neatly cancelled him for saying nasty things about BlackRock have furnished the front room of populist conservatism since the dawn of the Trump era. He is indeed one of our leading luminaries, and I must say I have quite a lot of time for the guy. I have, however, been swift to remind starry-eyed Tuck fanboys that during his tenure on Fox, throughout the scamdemic, he conveniently avoided the issue of the COVID vaccines. Certainly, now that the golden handcuffs are off, he has been more vocal on the matter, not least in the speech linked in the description. And we must perhaps forgive Tucker and concede that when working for a media behemoth like Fox, there are simply things one cannot say, especially when Pfizer's total advertising spend was over $100 million in 2021, a significant proportion of which we can assume went to Fox. I've repeatedly said, put not your trust in princes. And I don't exclude Tucker Carlson from this mix. Along with the likes of Elon Musk, Andrew Tate, Nigel Farage, and even Donald Trump himself, I say we must see all these men for what they are. Hustlers and players, charismatic and well-intentioned certainly, but out for themselves at the end of the day. And while they may converge with us on a broad array of socio-cultural political issues, we should never abdicate our personal responsibility for the resurgence of our people to these idols. In Tucker's case, I currently extend a certain amount more leniency. And I should also note that this now also applies to Donald Trump, following the assassination attempt, which occurred just last weekend at the time of this recording. But this will need to be the topic for a forthcoming video. Going back to Tucker, his recent discussions of our struggle through a spiritual lens, with frank reference to his own faith, the paramount importance of telling the truth as often and as fully as one is able, and his crystalline grasp of the anti-human agenda of the globalist elite, all this suggests to me that despite his great wealth and fame, and despite the fact that his father was a US intelligence officer, red flag, same as Andrew Tate, he might just be one of the good guys, and at the very least, far less controlled opposition than he was while working for Rupert Murdoch. I like Tucker's current tune. I don't trust him 100%, but then again, I don't really trust anyone 100%. As Warden Norton famously pontificated to Andy Dufresne's arriving prisoner party in The Shawshank Redemption, put your trust in the Lord, your ass belongs to me. Much as I despise the Warden, hilarious caricature though he is, I tend to agree with him, or at least the salience of his statement. Who does Warden Norton represent? The Warden represents the machine, and it is quite likely that the agents of the machine care not what happens after they die, but only that they are in power as long as they live on this earth. That is, put your trust in the Lord, for I care not what he does to me in eternity, because while we're both here, on this patch of ground, your ass belongs to me. And so I maintain, put not your trust in princes. However, as far as princes go, Tucker is probably my favourite right now. I'll tell you who I remain disappointed with, though. Jordan Peterson. I expect none of us are strangers to disillusionment. How many fallen idols must we endure? How many human frailties must we discover in the various manifestations of our heroic personages? Tommy Robinson is a cokehead. Andrew Tate became a Muslim. Paul Joseph Watson sleazed on Lauren Southern like a common London tomcat. And Tucker? Yeah, Tucker failed to call out the vaccines while he had his golden handcuffs on. I've said often that I consider the COVID vaccine to be the paramount issue of our time. And this may be the one issue on which I offer no quarter to cowards and shills who went along with the narrative because it suited them to do so, but more so those who then recanted once the science changed and accordingly changed their own tunes. A perfect example of this is the much vaunted nurse Dr John Campbell. Go back to his videos from 2021 and check out his opinion on the vaccines then, compared to the heroic stand he's taking now. Or just watch Alistair Williams' brutal takedowns of him linked in the description. It'll take you way less time and will at least make you laugh. I think I can forgive Tucker for his silence on the vaccines, grudgingly, because I suppose at the time, as the highest rated news personality in the world, he did some simple math and decided I could lose my job and my platform by saying this one thing, or I could use the pedestal that these evil bastards provide me to try and destroy them. At least that's what I tell myself. It's much the same calculus that Tim Pool applies to the format of his nightly show, and it is far from ideal. I do, however, consider Tim to be, despite his considerable contribution to our fight, an immoral heathen and borderline narcissist, whereas I believe fairly firmly that Tucker is a man of God. But all moral judgments and Tim Pool rabbit holes aside, let's get back to the issue. Tucker versus Jordan. Were you aware, as indeed a friend of mine and long-term Jordan Peterson fanboy was not, that back in 2021, Jordan went online to his millions of followers and said, "Get the damn vaccine"? Here's our text conversation from just last week. Well, first of all, Tucker never said that, as far as I'm aware. Tucker never told anyone to get the damn vaccine. He stayed silent, sure, and perhaps there's a special place for him in hell, and one which we'll never know about unless we wind up there with him and all the others who didn't quite cut the mustard. But if it were up to me, I'd forgive him. Now, I say this as a man who read 12 Rules for Life and was transformed in no small way by Peterson's enigmatic philosophy. But rather than staying silent like Tucker did on the vaccine, Jordan, on the other hand...
It's obvious that what you're doing is wrong. It's obvious that it's really complicated. And so my response to this is to suspend judgment for 6 months, for 6 months from now. Fearing as I do the loss of civil liberties, and although I would encourage people to get the damn vaccine and let's get the hell over this, I think it's time to suspend judgment for 6 months.
Many months later.
Canadians who aren't vaccinated now cannot leave the country. Yeah. Like, what the hell? Why is that? And I got vaccinated and people took me to task for that. And I thought, all right, I'll get the damn vaccine. Here's the deal, guys. I'll get the vaccine. You fucking leave me alone. And did that work? No.
No shit, Sherlock.
I think it's time to suspend judgment for 6 months, although I would encourage people to get the damn vaccine and let's get the hell over this.
And it bears mentioning how difficult this video clip was to find. It took me 10 minutes of searching on 3 different browsers to find even this shonky rendition. An immediate red flag. Jordan Peterson is one of the most Googled and influential figures of the past decade. Why then should it be so difficult to locate a video of him saying, "Get the damn vaccine"? Go try it now for a little censorship experiment. Type in, Jordan Peterson, get the damn vaccine. Use whatever browser you like, use Twitter, hell, type it directly into YouTube itself, and you'll probably have to spend several minutes filtering through rubbish to find him actually saying these words. It raises the question, why would the world's most powerful tech monopolies, who are all deeply in bed with the pharmaceutical industrial complex and the globalist power matrix that pushed this poison in the first place, not want us to remember that he said this 3 years ago? When viewed through this perhaps overly simplistic lens, it smacks quite crudely of controlled opposition. Oh yes, Jordan has changed his tune now, and fans may still argue he just didn't know, he was in the dark like the rest of us, but at least he's taken a stand now. At least? I would say the least a man with the entire countercultural internet at his fingertips in 2021. A man who was then rubbing shoulders through at least 1 degree of separation with most of the leading scientific lights in the early COVID vaccine alarm bell brigade. The least such a man could have done would be to remain silent, like Tucker did. But here's the difference between Tucker and Jordan. Tucker worked for Rupert Murdoch, whose hands are tied by all manner of nefarious interests, not least the big pharma marketing spend at Fox. Jordan was a free agent, wasn't he? That then leads us back to the hypothetical argument that his hands weren't tied at all, he just didn't know. I don't think so. At the risk of repeating previous videos ad nauseum, I must say again that if an absolute nobody like me, through a little basic research, knew in 2021 that in all probability mRNA vaccines were both then how the hell did a personage of such countercultural clout as Jordan Peterson not know? To say nothing of the fact that before even looking into the issue, I knew, through basic common sense and established scientific fact to date, that it was impossible to develop a vaccine for a coronavirus. And if it was remotely possible, it could not be done in a period of 6 months. And that's if one even believes in as an effective medical tool at all. At the very least, how was there not enough doubt in Peterson's mind to simply stay silent on the subject, as others such as Tucker and Douglas Murray did, both presumably for the reason of golden handcuffs? Despicable but understandable. Jordan, from the popular tale we are told, had no such handcuffs. Or did he? And thus we are simply expected to put his ridiculous faux pas down to ignorance. The man with 156 IQ was simply ignorant? Okay, bro. Cool story. Go clean your room, Jordan. We all remember exactly where we were at certain critical junctures in life, when our understanding of the world took an abrupt turn. I doubt a single viewer can fail to remember where they were when 9/11 happened, for instance. Older viewers may even recall what they were doing when they first heard the news of the JFK assassination. And I'm sure all of us will remember exactly where we were and what we were doing on the 13th of July this year. As such, I remember exactly where I was when I first became a serious vaccine skeptic, having trusted the science my entire life. It was September 2021, and I was taking a bath. A friend had sent me the essay that I've linked in the description earlier in the day, and much as I'd have preferred to lose myself in music or a mindless novel, I resolved to plough through it. The topic of vaccine mandates was becoming prevalent at the time, not just in Melbourne, but worldwide, and I felt I needed to educate myself through whatever sketchy means necessary. Such was the lack of anything other than keen enthusiasm from mainstream sources. At the time I was doubtful about this obscure blog site, But as I read on, a lot of dots began connecting, and even my own rudimentary understanding of epidemiology began crying, yes, this actually makes sense, and what they're telling us on the 6 o'clock news doesn't. By the time I'd finished reading, gotten out of the bath and dried off, I was texting up a storm to family and friends, attempting to warn them about this vaccine. I'd had my doubts for almost a year already, having consumed plenty of cautionary content from the various writers and podcasters I was following at the time. I remember former Pfizer Vice President Dr Mike Yeadon talking to James Delingpole about it, late in 2020, a conversation which appears to have been scrubbed from the internet, but I've linked his subsequent two appearances with James in the description. I'd been wading through anti-vax discourse for months, but finally, this obscure yet compelling essay was the straw that broke the camel's back and made me a vaccine. And it wasn't even 12 months as the fruits of the jab became evident, and I'd gone much deeper down the vaccine rabbit hole with the likes of RFK Jr., until I was what the propaganda apparatus of the machine likes to call an anti-vax. And let us be clear, for context, 10 years ago, in my Patrick Bateman phase, video linked in the description, I used to love making fun of anti-vaxxers on Facebook and Twitter. My pre-COVID vaccine regret is another topic for another day, and much less the odd symptoms I now recall developing at the age of 11 after my MMR vaccine, than the fact that I had my infant child jabbed to the hilt because, well, vaccines save lives, right? But while I and millions of other people of very limited means were discovering the true nature of these new miracle drugs and all their predecessors, what was the mighty freedom fighter Jordan Peterson doing? He was telling millions of people to suspend judgment for 6 months and get the damn vaccine. Our earthly rulers have been shown to be evil. That much should be a basic tenet of any awake person's worldview by now. But our earthly idols, too, are imperfect humans, as indeed is each of us. It was this singular realization that no human could offer me absolute truth, made so clear during the COVID years, that began for me the rediscovery of my spiritual life. Imperfection demands room for forgiveness, and the spiritual life, at least as far as I understand it through the Gospels of Christ, implies that repentance is grounds for forgiveness. Often our fallen idols repent, often they do not. In Tucker's case, it appears more cut and dry. He couldn't speak up, but now he can. I've yet to hear Jordan apologise for telling people to get the vaccine, and if you have him on video to this effect, please do share it with me. Our fallen idols are many, and indeed the lesson here is that we should not have idols at all. Leaders and luminaries, yes, but idolatry paves the way to blind faith, which is exactly what has led our people into the snare we now find ourselves in. Forgiveness is a tricky thing, and each case must be considered on its own merits, and I have made clear many times what I think should be done to those who aided and abetted the fraud, the greatest ever crime against humanity. I stopped reading Douglas Murray's books when he fell silent on the vaccine issue, a man whom I'd previously revered as a stalwart of our movement. Can his silence be forgiven? I lost a great deal of respect for Tucker Carlson when he fell silent. Can Tucker's silence be forgiven? But the question of my forgiveness or yours is ultimately irrelevant. What is relevant is who we can trust. I say again, put not your trust in princes. But if you'll permit me to use a playground analogy, I'm far more willing to trust the kid who stands silently by with a troubled frown while the bully demands his victim's lunch money than the kid who stands behind the bully and yells, "Yeah, give him your damn lunch money." Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. Please also subscribe to my Substack at jjdawson.substack.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch, please do follow me on X at RealJJDawson. You can also follow me on Getter, Gab, and Minds. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do give it a like and share it about, because it really helps me out.